All right, what's up, everybody? I'm here today, gonna make a uh, recording of this tier list for NFL quarterbacks. So this is basically a list of the talent level currently of all the NFL quarterbacks. Now I'm using this Kapwing tier list maker online. I'll leave a link to that in the description. Um, and for this list, so as I said, this is the current talent level of all these NFL quarterbacks. So like not, I'm not going to put Aaron Rodgers above all the other players just because he's had a great career. You'll see where I put him in the video, but it's not necessarily based on past performances. It's more based on like their current abilities. Um, and I also left off all the rookie quarterbacks just because I haven't seen enough of them really. I know we just had week one of the NFL season. Currently, uh, currently we are in week like we are currently in the middle of the Bills Jets game. I saw Aaron Rodgers got taken out because he got injured on like the first drive. But I feel like it's kind of beginning of football season. This is something people could potentially be interested in, and let me know your thoughts, comments. Obviously, people are going to disagree on some things. There's somewhat of a consensus on to how good the quarterbacks are, like each quarterback is within the league, but there's definitely some people who have varying opinions, and I'd love to hear yours in the comments below. So let's get this started. So first of all, we have Derek Carr, um, Saints quarterback, newly acquired by the Saints. He's a weird one because he hasn't actually had, he doesn't really have that high of a ceiling, I don't think, but he also has a pretty high floor. So I'm putting him in the C range just because I think like if he has weapons around him, like enough weapons in a culture, like an organization with a culture of winning, he could have like legitimate success in the postseason. I'm not sure if the Saints, are that team. Obviously he played like okay yesterday. Um, so we'll see how it goes with him. But I think he does have talent. People saw that in the Pro Bowl, like talent, like those games or whatever, where he was just like killing it. So, we'll see how he does. Again, like I don't think he would potentially go higher than like a B minus or low B area. But I don't think he'd drop much lower than a D, as a starting quarterback. And again, like also I want to emphasize this, like I have to rank all these players. This is in relation to each other to an extent. So like a player who I might rank pretty low, like I mean obviously F sounds bad, but like at the end of the day, these are all starting quarterbacks in the NFL, and they've earned that right, to start. And I think even if a player has a lower grade, they still should be starting in the NFL potentially. Um, for a lot of these players. And I think that for some of these teams, like a lot of them, for example, have run first offenses, so it's kind of hard to put a quarterback super high. Is it like SAB tier? So I'll get into that in a minute. As you can see here, this is actually a prime example. Like Atlanta seems to have a run first offense. I like Desmond Ridder. But I don't think he's done enough to prove that he's like a top quarterback. It seems weird because Atlanta has been throwing resources his way and been getting like super behind Desmond Ridder, but they didn't really do that with Mariota or like other quarterbacks as of late. But it seems like they're really behind Desmond Ridder, and I do think he has a lot of potential. He had a lot of success at Cincinnati, but I just haven't seen him throw enough. Like he does more like safe throws. He'll throw like this past first weekend he was like 15 of 18. So that's a great completion percentage, but like he didn't throw that much. So I mean like I'm putting him like in the E tier. Like it's his second year. I just haven't seen too much yet. But I'm not saying he's like a bad quarterback. I know that sounds kind of counterintuitive because I'm putting him pretty low here. But I just don't really think that you have enough um, enough data to or enough film to basically view him as someone who's like an S or a top tier quarterback yet. And that could change this season. That very well may change. um but and also this isn't like I said data. This isn't like I'm not looking at their stats really. This is kind of just like I'm just eyeballing it, kind of seeing what I think off the bat. Now, Daniel Jones had a pretty atrocious game last night. Um, it's weird with him though. I mean, Cowboys defense obviously was, is like one of the top in the NFL. Um, but with him, he has had like a massive lack of weapons with the Giants, so it's really hard to say how good he actually is. He got the contract extension and actually had a decent year last year. I don't think he's a great quarterback, but he just hasn't really had that many weapons. I mean, obviously we saw with the Chiefs, they have a massive lack of weapons right now without Travis Kelce. So, and they lost to the Lions week 1. So, I mean, I don't think, it's weird. The Chiefs are a little bit different because Kadarius Toney is like literally their number 1 wide receiver right now. And that wasn't the case for most of the Giants unless players were injured, or like Daniel Jones had better receivers, than Kadarius Toney at his wide receiver 1 position. Kadarius Toney I view as more of a, return specialist than a true receiver. But, nonetheless, he didn't have that many weapons. It was, he doesn't currently have many weapons, so I'll put him at a C. I don't want to be too harsh on him because he just hasn't had that many weapons, and, there's not too much you can do. He's a relatively mobile quarterback as well, so that's a definite bonus for him. Okay, this is a weird one with Ryan Tannehill. He just hasn't really played well in the last few years, and he had a lot of potential when he was younger, especially with Miami, but I feel like injuries have marred his career. And, it's really hard. Like, I feel like, Tennessee is looking to replace him. They've just been drafting QBs left and right with Malik Willis and Will Levis. So, I don't think he will I don't think he'll last too much longer as a starting QB. And he didn't play very well the first game, obviously. So, I mean, I got to put him in the F tier, but I do think that his career has been kind of marred by injuries, unfortunately for him. His career could have turned out a lot differently if he hadn't gotten these injuries. And I think also, like, he does legitimately have a lot of talent, but like the current situation he's in Tennessee, it makes it like really difficult to rank him particularly highly. And I think also earlier on in his career, you could have ranked him relatively high because he was one of those top, like, not necessarily top, but he was like thought of as a solid quarterback earlier in his career. Trevor Lawrence, somewhat of an opposite of Ryan Tannehill right now, like definitely an up and coming player on an up and coming team. He had a great finish to the last year as well as his team. He's got a bunch of weapons with Calvin Ridley joining. And if you actually watched him play like the end of last year, he was solid. I mean, I'm actually going to put him at the A tier. And, I don't really see him going to the S tier in his career, per se. Like, I don't think he's, like, you'll see who I put in the S tier. I think it might be a stretch to put him along with those two at some point in his career, but he has really, succeeded in Jacksonville. And we'll see how everything turns out for him. But regardless, he's gotten a lot of weapons, to be fair. But he's definitely shown a lot of improvement and confidence in terms of being a leader with his team. Okay, Brock Purdy. Now this one, again, he hasn't had that much. He hasn't had that much film, basically. He hasn't played too much yet. Like, it's his second year. He started, second half of last year pretty much. But he has, balled out. If you actually look, I don't think he's gotten a QB rating of less than, 95 in any of his career starts. And he's just played well. And you could say, that's because of the 49ers' weapons, and, that very well may be the case. But, I do think Purdy fits their system pretty well because he does all the little things right. He has good mechanics. He doesn't make necessarily too many unforced errors, at least yet. And, he's basically a good enough quarterback to take that 49ers team to, a Super Bowl, I think. And, people will say, oh, he has weapons. He's, not that good. But, he ended up doing better than Jimmy G and Trey Lance with those same weapons. And Jimmy G actually, you could say Trey Lance wasn't given a chance, but he did play some and, not to the level that Purdy played. Jimmy G, he ended up actually, he gets a lot of hate, but, he actually has had a very strong record with the 49ers compared to other quarterbacks outside of Purdy. Regardless, I think it's hard to give Purdy a lot of hate, or talk negatively about him, and also talk positively about Jalen Hurts, because they're very similar in the sense that they both have a lot of talent around them. Hurts has a ton of weapons as well, and he has an even better O-line than Purdy does. Obviously, Hurts won the Super Bowl, so they're a little bit different. But I mean, I'm gonna put Purdy in the B tier, because he has just done very well, and I mean he legitimately, like, I wouldn't say he necessarily has the same talent as someone like Trevor Lawrence, but he's done very well for himself and his situation, and I think he could potentially be one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL if he keeps this up, or at least viewed that way. Maybe not like pure raw talent, but like he's just been getting it done. I mean, he's just a baller. Like, I don't know how else to, people who hate on him, like, I'm not a 49ers fan by any means. I just don't like the 49ers, but I do think Purdy's a solid QB for them. Now, Kyler Murray is a weird one, because I do think he has a lot of talent. Like, relatively speaking, like, he's not, okay, I say a lot. I don't mean it as in like S tier level or whatever, but I think with his recent injury, and his, like, stuff in the media about him playing too much Call of Duty and stuff and not watching film, like, he's gotten a lot of hate. And I'm not saying it's not warranted, but I do think that the talent is there. Like, watching him, the past, couple years, specifically like his rookie year, like not last year, I would say, but like, at the beginning of the NFL, he actually did show that he could play. At the beginning of his career, last year was kind of a weird year for him. But in the years before that, he actually had pretty decent years. And even last year, it was kind of weird. The Cardinals weren't in a great place, especially with Cliff Kingsbury leaving after last year. He got injured. Regardless, like, I do think he has talent, and if he like puts in the work, he could legitimately have success with the Cardinals or wherever he ends up. I do find it kind of weird that that the Cardinals, like, are viewing themselves as tanking after giving him a massive contract. It's kind of like they drafted Rosen top 10, then didn't really give him a shot, and then drafted Kyler Murray. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying Rosen is like a dude to start, for their team, but it seems like they keep wanting to move on to the next best thing. And I mean, Caleb Williams is kind of seeing that, and he almost like seemed like he and his dad or whatever were like, yeah, I'm not sure, we might just stay another year if it's the Cardinals. Is what they kind of seemed like they were saying, because they don't want to be that next Kyler Murray or Josh Rosen who just gets kicked to the curb if things don't work out right away. I honestly think Caleb Williams is the most talented. I don't like him, but I think he's the most talented player in the draft pool this upcoming draft cycle, and more talented than any of the draft picks this past year either. So I mean, it makes sense that the Cardinals want him. But regardless, I'm going on a tangent here. I'd put Kyler Murray at the D tier, sort of a D plus, because he has like a lot of talent, but just hasn't, like, he just isn't really putting it together. His Call of Duty stuff is kind of, he's gotten a bad rap recently, and the Cardinals are looking to replace him. So I do think, like, I think a couple years ago you might have put him at around a B tier or something almost, but he just, it's a weird situation with him. I'll give him almost like a D plus, because he has the talent, but it's just he's not playing right now because he's hurt, and we'll see how it goes with him and the Cardinals. It seemed like kind of a mess right now. All right, now Geno Smith. Okay, this is a weird one. Geno is a he was a career backup to Russell Wilson, and then last year he was the starter. They didn't draft a quarterback. They just were like, well, we'll roll with Geno, and he's done well, relatively speaking. He did very well at the beginning of the year, and then kind of tapered off towards the end. So it's really hard, and didn't have a great game this past weekend either. So it's kind of hard to say exactly where he belongs. But I'd give him around a C, honestly. I mean, he's done pretty well for himself, given that he was career backup, and now he's, being, starting for an NFL team. I don't think he's like, a top NFL QB, but I don't think he's bad. we'll see how it goes with him because obviously the season hasn't started off great, but, maybe it'll turn it around. Now, Goff. Okay. This is another weird one. Okay. It's an interesting one because people have gotten a lot, like Goff has gotten a lot of hype recently, and he's done well. I'll give him that. I'll give him that he's done very, very well recently. And I do like the Lions. Maybe I'm being a little bit harsh. But I think, he also has benefited largely from the talent around him. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown is like one of the top receivers in the league. He had Swift, DeAndre Swift. He had TJ Hawkinson for a good period of time. Now he's got Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery. He's got a fantastic O-line. And, Jameson Williams obviously hasn't really played in the NFL yet, but he's potentially going to be a solid receiver for Jared Goff. So I think he's one that actually has benefited largely from, having a fantastic O-line, like absolutely fantastic, and, really solid weapons around him. And he's done well. He has done well with everything he's been given. But, I have a hard time, saying, okay, if he didn't have those, if he didn't have those weapons, if he was on another team like the New York Giants, I'm not sure, if Daniel Jones, for example, would do better than him. I'm just not sure if he would do better on the Giants, Jared Goff, than Daniel Jones. Like Jared Goff, if you watch him, he's very immobile. He won't run very much. So it would be tough if he was under a lot of pressure all the time. And I think it's weird too because he was traded, in that Stafford trade. And I would, be hard pressed to say that at the time, especially that Stafford was, that Goff was an upgrade. I think at the time people would say Goff was a downgrade in that Stafford trade. It wasn't like he things weren't working out with him on the Rams. But he's done well for himself. I think he can get it done with the Lions. I think he can be that guy. He can be their franchise kill quarterback. Honestly, I do, because of the talent. So, but I do think he's somewhat of one like Carr, who's he doesn't have too high of a ceiling in terms of what he can do, just because he's not particularly mobile. But I mean, he's gotten it done for the Lions so far. So I'm gonna, put him right around there with Jones and Carr. Fields, okay. Justin Fields is I think he's a very talented player. He hasn't had that many weapons, and the Bears organization is not great. But he's a talented athlete, I'd say. He's not the best quarterback. He has a lot of potential. We'll see how it goes with the Bears. But I think he's another one where I think I just gotta put him as a C. We'll see how it goes. I mean, he had a very solid end to last season. I will give him that. He had a very solid end to last season. But I want to see. I don't know if he. I want to see him make that next leap before I put him at an A or a B tier. I don't think he's a bad player, but I don't think he's a great. I haven't seen consistent, fantastic play from him to give him that level. But, maybe after this season, if he does well with the Bears, which I could definitely see happening, he could be one of the top quarterbacks in the league. I could definitely see it happening. Okay. Jordan Love, Aaron Rodgers backup. Now this is just really kind of hard to gauge. He had a great game actually this past weekend, so maybe he will break out this year. But there hasn't been that many, there hasn't been too much to see, too much film. He hasn't played too much. Again, like I said, I wasn't grading rookies, but this one's kind of hard to gauge just based on how he's been. But in the games that he's played, he hasn't done particularly well until yesterday, until the first game of this season. So I think I'll bump him up. I initially had him at an E, but I put him at a D just because of yesterday. He looked solid. Maybe he can be that guy that replaces Aaron Rodgers, and we'll see how it goes. But there's just not enough, game time from him for me to really make a confident call on whether he's, an E, a D, or he could be an A. Who knows? I mean, I don't really he wasn't great again when he played initially. I remember when Rodgers was injured a couple times, he was not the best, but he was really good yesterday when he played the Bears, and he hasn't had that many opportunities yet, and he's probably grown and matured as well. So he could definitely be a solid quarterback for years to come. I just don't quite know yet, and that's why I'm putting him at the D tier. Now, Howell, another one. Okay, he's on the Redskins, or sorry, God, on the Washington Commanders. I'm not going to get into that name situation, but he, yeah, I mean, I'm going to put him at the E tier. I just don't think he's had, like, people, there's a lot of hype around him. People like him a lot. The Redskins like him or fuck. Okay, I'm just going to call them Washington. Washington likes him a lot. And their fans like him a lot. And I think he's a good player. But it's been weird. It's not like his numbers have been eye-popping because it's Washington, obviously. So, and he hasn't played that much. So it's similar to Ridder. Like, he hasn't, he's on a team that doesn't, isn't super passing oriented. But when it comes to Howell, it seems like the Commanders like him a lot, and we'll see how it goes. I think he's a talented player. He did well at UNC when he played, and he's done at least as well as like any other quarterback since Kirk Cousins left. So I mean, he could be their guy of the future. We'll just have to see. I mean, again, I'm putting him in an E tier, but I don't mean to say, oh, he's a bad quarterback, because he could be their guy, and I think he's done very well for himself, given that he was kind of drafted by a questionable organization. Just there's been a lot of controversy. There's been some not great culture of winning recently. Like, they just haven't won very much. But so basically no quarterbacks have done that well. He doesn't have a ton of weapons, but he's done pretty well for himself, all things considered. But I just haven't seen enough from him to be like, oh, he's definitely going to be the future of the franchise. So we'll just have to wait and see. But good on him so far. Okay, Dak. I mean, people meme this guy all the time, just like Daniel Jones. I think he's actually a solid quarterback. I don't dislike, he's not great. I mean, I don't like the Cowboys. I kind of like Dak though. As a player, he's kind of an underdog type player, like drafted out of Mississippi State. And I think he's like a good enough quarterback for the Cowboys to succeed. I mean, I think it's hard for me to say how good the Cowboys actually are, because a lot of times people hype up the Cowboys because they have such a massive fan base. But it's hard for me to say exactly how good the Cowboys are. But like, assuming the Cowboys have a team that's very solid and things go right within the organization, I'd say, because a lot of it is also luck. I think he's a good enough quarterback to have him into his postseason, like a late postseason run. But I don't think he's great. Like, I'm not gonna put him in A or S tier or whatever, because he just they got knocked out by the 49ers last in the not NFC championship, in the divisional round, for example, and you got like 12 points or something. So it's hard to put him up there, but he has performed pretty solidly when I've seen him play. He's not like, when you watch him, he's not like bad, but he's not good. Like, he's not great. Like, it's just kind of I put him at the C tier. Jimmy G, yeah, I'm gonna put him at the C tier as well. Same thing. I think he's like legitimately a good quarterback, relatively speaking. Like, he's not bad. I mean, I think it's tough with the 49ers being injured a lot, but I mean, if you look at those stats with the 49ers record with Jimmy Garoppolo at QB and then get without him at QB, it's night and day. Like, obviously Purdy's changed that, but he's been the 49ers guy for years. He took him to the NFC Championship game. He took him to the Super Bowl. He's not going to light it up with numbers, but I think he does have talent there. And I think part of that is with the 49ers and their system. They're not like a super passing oriented team. But I think Garoppolo is a solid quarterback, similar to these other guys. He's not bad. People give him crap, but he's not bad. He's not going to like light you up. Maybe with looks, but that's about it. All right. We got Lamar here. Okay. Lamar signed a massive extension in the offseason with the Ravens. Good for him. Good for the Ravens. I think he's a good quarterback. I like Lamar. I do think for some reason a few years ago when he won the MVP, like, he had a great season that year, but it seemed like people were overrating him a ton. Like people were hyping him up a ton, and I think that wasn't like, I don't think that was 100% valid. I think he's a good quarterback, and I think he's had a lot of injuries recently. And he doesn't have that many weapons, so it's tough for him in a lot of respects. I do think he's a very good quarterback. I think sometimes he can be overhyped. Like, some people think Mahomes is overhyped, and I think Mahomes is great, but he can be overhyped. Again, but you'll see what I rank Mahomes soon. But so that's not, don't let that take anything away from what I said about Mahomes. But he is one of those where I feel like he was overhyped for a bit. But I do think he's a very solid quarterback, very athletic, probably like one of the most athletic quarterbacks in the league easily. He could definitely take the Ravens late in the playoffs. He didn't have a good game this weekend, actually, but we'll see how it turns out for him. I mean, he just signed a solid extension. And I'm going to put him at the B tier. I wouldn't quite put him at the A right now just because of his injuries recently. Like, last year, he was injured all the time, and he hasn't performed great just most recently, but he definitely has the talent. We'll see how he goes. Okay, Russell Wilson was on the Seahawks, won the Super Bowls. He was a fantastic player for them. Then goes to Denver and just sucks. Like, Denver sucked. He sucked. It was a mess. And Geno replaces him in Seattle, and Geno does well, relatively speaking, for a bit. I mean, he's cooled off a little bit recently, but it's hard to place Russell Wilson right now, especially given that he just had an absolutely, not phenomenal, but he had, like, a really good game with the Broncos. Maybe it's Sean Payton, maybe, like, him joining helps him out. I'm not sure. I think Russell Wilson is talented. It's just hard to say right now at this stage in his career, like, okay, maybe it was somewhat of the system that helped him out at Seattle. But I think also he had a solid game with the Broncos just now. So, I mean, prior to that game, I might have put him at the D tier in terms of his current outlook. Like, last year, for example, like mid last season, I've been like, okay, Russell Wilson, D, Broncos are a mess. He's not playing well. But now I put him maybe at the C tier, kind of even with Geno Smith, actually. Especially because Russell Wilson had a solid game last night and things could potentially be looking up. But we'll see how it works out for him in Denver with Sean Payton. But again, he's had a great career. Right now in Denver, he has performed well in his first game this season. So there's definitely some potential there that he could show flashes of his former self when he won Super Bowls with Seattle. But we'll see how it goes. Or went to Super Bowls. Did he win two? I know he won at least one. Regardless, he was solid for Seattle for years, and it seems like things may be turning around based on the initial game, but Denver still lost. So it's hard to say. I'm gonna leave it at that. C tier for Russell Wilson. Kenny Pickett, another one that's weird. Like, Pittsburgh has a mess of an O-line. He had an atrocious game yesterday. And, I don't think he's going to have a breakout season, but I do think he has talent. It's just partially on Pittsburgh being a questionable team at the moment. So I'm going to give him a D. He could increase his ranking here, but he just, hasn't shown enough, in either his first year or, yesterday, obviously he didn't. He does have a lot of these guys have potential in increasing and, being one of the top QBs, taking their team to, the Super Bowl, whatever. But, with the Steelers, they're just not good right now. And obviously the 49ers defense tore them a new one. So, we'll see how it goes for him. But yeah, D for now. Tua is another interesting one because he's been injured so much. And who knows how long his career will even be if he gets another concussion, But I think he does have a lot of talent. I am very skeptical against left-handed quarterbacks. I'm a left-handed, or at least I throw left-handed, because I just haven't seen very many succeed. But Tua is legitimately talented, I think, and he has a ton of weapons, obviously Tyreek and Jalen Waddle. And I think when he's healthy, the Dolphins just are a very dangerous team. They beat the Bills last year, for example. They beat the Chargers, who are another very strong team, yesterday. And, he had a fantastic game. So I'm going to give him B right now. We'll see how everything goes. But I do think he has a lot of talent currently. Oh, my God. Okay. Yeah. I'll give him a B. He's definitely one of the top, not top, but like, he's definitely one of the better quarterbacks in terms of the talent that he possesses, and he has a lot of weapons. So, it's one of those things where, he's in a good situation right now, except for the fact that he's been injured so much. And if you watch him, like, he's a significant upgrade on any backup quarterback that the Dolphins have had. All right, Mac Jones. Okay, I actually think the Patriots should have started Bailey Zappi. Like, I'm gonna get so much heat. Like, I'm like debating between the D and the E tier for them. I mean, he had a pretty decent game yesterday, and he had success at Alabama. So, I feel like I'd give him I'll give him D. I'll give him a D for now. He's similar to Pickett. The Patriots don't have many weapons, so I'll give him that. But it seems like Zappi has done better when Zappi's played for the Patriots. So it's really hard to like give him very high ratings because of that. He just hasn't really like showed his potential too much yet, I guess, or lived up to his potential. But the Patriots are it's like weird. They don't have that many weapons for him. So it's hard to slight him too much. But at the same time, I also think Zappi did better without those weapons. So, I'm going to give him a D for now. And we'll see how it goes in this upcoming season. Kirk Cousins. Okay, everybody loves him after the quarterback documentary, including myself. People also saw how atrocious his O-line was. At this current level, he has Thielen left, but he's got Justin Jefferson, arguably the best receiver in the NFL. I would actually say Chase is better, but, regardless. Justin Jefferson, Kirk Cousins has been a decent QB and memed a lot, but I think largely has been negatively affected because of, lousy team overall performances. Like, people say, oh, primetime Kirk is bad, but like he actually hasn't performed badly on primetime if you actually look at his statistics. And again, this isn't meant to be a statistical analytical video, but he actually hasn't played badly on primetime if you actually watch him. His O-line for one is atrocious. So I will give him C. I'll give him like a C plus ish. He can be like a C plus. He doesn't have a high ceiling. Like his ceiling is like a low B area, but I do think that he's got that drive, and he has a good amount of talent. If the Vikings figure it out, get him a good O-line, I do think that they can have some success. Okay, Deshaun Watson. It's interesting because I feel like a few years ago, like when he was on the Texans playing that air guitar after scoring touchdowns, you would have given him like a B tier maybe. Potentially, he was a solid quarterback, signed a long extension, and then he didn't play for a couple years, and he just hasn't looked the same since. And he signed like a fully guaranteed $220 million contract. So I think because that contract is fully guaranteed and he just like hasn't done anything since really for the Browns, he did win like yesterday, but here, I'll give him like an F plus. I don't really feel bad about like ranking him low, but you could argue like, okay, this guy, Deshaun Watson, Ryan Tannehill, they've proven themselves in the NFL. Sam Howell, like these guys haven't, but I think it's a little bit like unfair because we haven't given, to rank these guys below Tannehill and Watson just because these guys, like a lot of them have entered pretty questionable situations regarding the team they've joined, and we just haven't seen enough from them, so I feel like giving them an F right away would be kind of harsh. Obviously Watson has a lot of talent, or at least he did at one point, but now it hasn't seemed like he's returned to that form prior to him sitting out for a year and then getting suspended for a long time. And now he's on the Browns, got paid a bunch, and he hasn't really performed super well since coming back. So, yeah. Stafford's another weird one. He got injured recently, so it's hard to say like how he will do, especially without Kupp at the moment. but he was like MVP contention during that season. The Rams won the Super Bowl. And I think Lions fans gave him a lot of crap, but I think honestly, he wasn't the reason for the Lions were not good for many years. It was the Lions. Stafford, first year out of the Lions, wins the Super Bowl. So I think right now it's hard to say with his injury, but I think Stafford will come back and actually have a decent season if Kupp comes back. So if Kupp comes back, if Kupp is solid, he'll have a decent season, especially because Puka Nacua, I think is his name, is a solid wide receiver too. It seems like with Kupp, being there. I mean, he led the Rams in like receptions and yards and stuff this past weekend against the Seahawks. So anyway, I give Stafford a C. Like these guys that have kind of like high floors and low ceilings, you can kind of see them all there. I feel like I just put them all at C. Okay, Baker Mayfield, another one. I think he gets a lot of hate unnecessarily. I don't think he's a great quarterback. I'm not going to argue that. Like he's like mediocre in in pretty much every single thing. From what I've seen recently, he's mediocre. However, he gets so much crap, and he was drafted by the Browns. The Browns hadn't won in 3 years prior to him, and now they're relevant again after him. So, I mean, I'm not saying that's entirely because of him, but he was the one who put them back on the map. He beat the Jets, I remember, on Thursday Night Football, had a solid rookie year, and then had a bit of a sophomore slump. The Browns organization was a mess, and honestly, like, he went to the Rams after last year, played pretty well, and, I mean, it's hard to give him so much crap. I mean, he went to the Rams, and then he went to the Bucks, and it was only his first game, but he actually had a decent game. He's not going to blow you away, but I think he's another one in the C area, like the C range right here, maybe C minus, but it's kind of hard to give him like a super low rating, because I do think that, obviously a lot of people don't like him. He's a very, big personality, but I think that he has been in a relatively rough situation as far as quarterbacks, playing for very questionable teams go. I mean, he's won the job at Tampa. He, won it in Cleveland, won it in LA. Was brought in on like 3 days notice, I remember, and then beat the Raiders, and like after being on the team for like 2 days on Thursday Night Football. So, I mean, I'd give him a C, maybe low C, but I don't think people will give him like Fs, and I don't think that's necessary. I think he's a decent quarterback. Aaron Rodgers. Okay, he just got injured, like on like the third play, as I mentioned. This game's going on right now. Yeah, I mean, it's hard because he's old, relatively speaking, compared to these other quarterbacks. He's like 39 or whatever. It's just whether to see there's enough gas left in the tank. Obviously, he's had a phenomenal career. He won the MVP 2 years ago. Last year was not great with the Packers, but Packers were kind of a mess. I think right now he's like, it depends. I don't know the extent of his injury. I don't know how well he'll be, but like his talent, I do think he's got some left in the tank, and I do think the Jets have the weapons for him to succeed. So I'll give him like a B minus right here, because he's not to the level of these guys, I don't think. But he did win the MVP just like 2 years ago. And so it's really hard to say like, oh, he's like a C or a D, based on that alone. I do think his injury issues are a bit of a concern. That's why I'm kind of giving him a B minus rather than like a B. And he's a bit older, so it's going to be tough to see. But we'll see how the Jets go. I mean, this is kind of a Super Bowl or bust year almost for the Jets. So we'll see how it goes for them. Herbert, okay. I feel like people think, there's a consensus that Herbert is like a pretty good quarterback, but not like great. I think people give him a lot of crap because the Chargers don't win. They lose the close games, and it's been, obviously when you're in the AFC West with the Chiefs, it's tough. But I legitimately think he kind of pounced on the scene like really quickly and well with the Chargers. And I think he's a good quarterback. I do. Like, I think he gets kind of a lot of hate, given that Like, just because of the Chargers not winning and them having a lot of talent. Like, the Chargers have a good amount of talent and haven't really won all that much. But I think he's a similar to Trevor Lawrence here. Like, honestly. Um, I'll give him A. We'll see how it goes. I mean, that might be a hot take. Maybe he should be a B. Some people would think. But I mean, I think he's one of the top quarterbacks in the league, like, honestly. And that's not me, just being like, oh, I only have one A so far. Like, no, I kind of plan this out a little bit in advance. And I do think Justin Herbert is a very solid quarterback. I'm not sure how the Chargers will fare this season, but I don't think it's on Herbert. If they don't do well, for example. I mean, I do think Herbert is a very solid quarterback, good pocket presence, pretty mobile, can take hits. I mean, he was injured for a bit last year and is playing through that. So the Chargers really do like him. But yeah, I'll give him an A. And Jalen Hurts, again, as I mentioned, like Brock Purdy, he has a ton of talent around him, phenomenal O-line, great system, great culture, Eagles. But he has won a Super Bowl, so I'd give him that A tier. I don't think I'm going to put him at the S yet because he, I don't think his talent is necessarily like above these guys here, but he's a definitely very solid player. He's more of a runner than both of these two, and he has more he has a better team. He's on a better team than either of those two guys, and I give him above Purdy because he ended up winning the Super Bowl. He had a phenomenal game. He could maybe get into the S tier if he starts repeating this, especially as like the Eagles, they get some turnover with their players, their O-line, their receivers. So I mean, he could legitimately be like the top player in the NFL at some point. But again, it's like Purdy. He has a lot of talent around him. But even though he has talent around him, even though he does have talent around him, he's done very well. So, I can't hate on Hurts. I can't hate on Purdy. They're both very solid players, in my opinion. And both of them have a lot of potential and have done a lot with their situation. I mean, Purdy, again, has done phenomenal. I can't state that enough. He has done very well. Same with Hurts. So I'll give Hurts an A. Okay. Who we got? We got three more here. Okay, I'll get Mahomes out of the way. S. He won the MVP last year. He didn't play great against the Lions, but he was he was able to avoid a lot of pressure pretty well. I mean, people don't understand. I think a lot of the Chiefs' O-line has been suspect ever since their first Super Bowl. Like, ever since they had, I think Mitchell Schwartz get injured, and then Eric Fisher was traded and injured. Their O-line, for example, he was running all over the place in the Super Bowl against the Bucs and still was the only player who showed up, it seemed. Obviously, that Super Bowl, also his receivers didn't really catch that Super Bowl. But, I mean, MVP last year, I don't think anyone would question that he's, at the very, at the top. He is at the top in terms of quarterbacks in the NFL. I mean, he's a phenomenal player. I don't know what else to say other than it's hard to say that he's not an S tier quarterback here. He's been super for the Chiefs, and even without a ton of weapons, he's done well. I mean, I know people will give him crap about the Lions game, but he had no weapons at all, and he didn't even play that badly. He had a few miscues on throws with Sky Moore, and also he had receivers drop the ball. Again, he didn't play perfectly. I'm not gonna, I know so many people don't like Mahomes because, I was saying people will overrate, people hype him up so much, that's all they talk about, all these announcers, blah, 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 Mahomes. So, I do think that some of it is overkill on that sense. But I think even though it is overkill, he's still, the top quarterback in the league. But, I don't need to gush over him any more than anybody already does. So I'll just give him an S tier. He's a very solid quarterback, reigning MVP in his prime. I mean, he's a good player. Okay, Josh Allen. Now this is an interesting one. Again, he was really, really good with Dabble, I think, there in Buffalo, and then kind of dropped off a little bit last year after Dabble left. But I do think in terms of the talent, he has the best arm of any of these quarterbacks. He's fast. He can run. He's mobile. Um, and like, if I'm honestly looking at like how the talent level and how good these quarterbacks can be, I would give him S tier with Mahomes. Like, I think these two are the two best quarterbacks in the league. And this is like maybe then Hurts, and then these two like, so yeah, I'd say like these two are the best, and then Hurts probably, and then these two below. So I mean, like, I think that's a pretty fair assumption. I mean, and this is also, again, I was saying with Hurts, he has talent around him. He won the Super Bowl. That's going to benefit his rating a bit. Obviously, with Herbert, like, if Herbert was on the Eagles, he might be S tier up here. So we'll see how everything goes. But I do think Allen is a phenomenal player. Like, I think people used to give him a lot of credit for being very good, and then he had some mediocre seasons. Not mediocre, but mediocre for his standards. You know, he had some interceptions, some mistakes, some costly mistakes. And so people might give him below like an A or a B tier, but I think he's like still legitimately got a lot of talent. He's like a big, tall dude, can take hits, can run, can throw like deeper than anybody else. So yeah, I'll give him S tier. And then the last one, Burrow. Again, he's an interesting one. I think he's a good player. He's a solid quarterback. Similar to Goff, he's not very mobile. However, he hasn't had a great O-line, and he's found a lot of success despite having an O-line. And I know I haven't, I know I don't, like, I'm not going to get into stats here. But, like, it's weird. He has, like, I think a pretty high completion percentage, like a very high completion percentage, but also has mistakes and, like, also makes mistakes with interceptions sometimes. And, you know, he doesn't really, like he doesn't light you up like on the stat sheet in terms of the amount of yards all the time. It depends it depends on all sorts of factors. But I do think he's had a lot of success with the Bengals. He's had a lot of phenomenal games. He beat the Chiefs, you know, for 3 straight times or whatever until this last AFC Championship game. And, you know, even that game, like, they could have easily won. They were right there with the Chiefs. I mean, a lot of people didn't like some calls, but, you know, regardless of that, like, he can compete with anybody in the league. Like, he beat Josh Allen just this past year, you know, in the playoffs in Buffalo. You know, so he's definitely a baller. Like, he's a guy you definitely want on your team. If you're like in terms of like a leader, a quarterback. However, obviously this past weekend against the Browns did not play well. He just signed a massive extension. I do think that, like, similar to Goff, he's not very mobile, so that kind of hurts him in terms of how good I think he is as a quarterback. And also, I was saying earlier, I think Jamar Chase is a better receiver than Justin Jefferson, because Jamar Chase actually was a better receiver while playing for the same quarterback. Justin Jefferson plays for a different quarterback. I'm not saying Kirk Cousins is better than Joe Burrow. I don't think that's necessarily the case. But I do think that the Vikings situation for Justin Jefferson has made it a little bit better than Jamar Chase and the Bengals, because he's obviously got T. Higgins there, who's also phenomenal. Joe Burrow, basically, I'm going to give him a B tier, and I know that's controversial, but I think similar to, like, Lamar, he, like, in terms of, like, I don't know, I feel like he's similar to Lamar in terms of talent level. I feel like he's similar to all these guys in terms of talent level, and a little below these guys, and a little below these guys. But that's talent level. It is weird because he has had a lot of success as a player, but he can't, like, I don't think, for example, as I said, he's not very mobile. And he, while he hasn't had a great offensive line, he has the best receivers in the NFL. Like, there's no question about it. Same with Tua. I think he has great receivers. So it's interesting. You know, I think he has been propped up a little bit. Like, people will overvalue his talent a little bit because of how good his receivers are. He has phenomenal receivers. And if, you know, he's not very mobile, again, obviously it hurts him with Bengals O-line being suspect. But I mean, I don't know, maybe I'd give him a B+. But I think in terms of the talent level, he's, you know, not quite up there with these guys. But yeah, man, let me know your thoughts in the comment section. You know, looking over this, I'm pretty confident. Like, I mean, I'm not confident, but like, because obviously we'll have to see how everything plays out with some of the guys that haven't, had much of an opportunity yet. But I think this is a relatively fair assumption or a relatively fair scale as of right now. Yeah, let me know your thoughts if you have any thoughts on, maybe like, hey, dude, you're freaking like rating of what's his face. I mean, Daniel Jones, dude, he should be S tier. I mean, let me know. I want to hear it. If people think I'm crazy for having Baker at C and think he should be F tier, then whatever, I want to hear it, man. But anyway, let me know. And again, obviously Baker had a ton of success in college. Doesn't translate to the NFL always. That's another thing people want to talk about. Obviously, college success doesn't translate to the NFL. Mac Jones is an example, I feel like, as well. But anyway, I want to hear your thoughts. I want to hear all your thoughts. So, let me know. Make sure to like this video, subscribe. Let me know if there's any other videos of various tier lists that you want me to make. I could do it with college players, college quarterbacks, college coaches, teams in general. Let me know. And it could be unrelated to football, unrelated to sports, totally different. I mean, I have, there's plenty of things that I keep up on to keep myself busy. So yeah, I'll make more tier lists in the future, but just let me know, what you want to hear, what you want to see from me. All right. So in light of Monday night's game, I figured I'd best address this now. Aaron Rodgers here, I feel like, I don't even know. I feel like the only thing to do is just delete him straight off the bat, because I don't even know what to do with that. Josh Allen, people are giving him a lot of crap. He is error prone, and I think people have known that, especially after last year. He makes a lot of turnovers. I think that's largely due to like the Bills' offense and him throwing the deep like all the time. He has a cannon for an arm. That being said, without Dabble, he has had more turnovers. I do think he still has a lot of talent, and that can be unlocked with someone like Dabble to kind of, control his, turnovers and make him a little bit more sound with his mechanics. I think Mahomes has done very well with Matt Nagy in that aspect. But yeah, I do think I'd have to put him down at the A tier. It's still very good, but I don't think it would be fair to put him above these guys. I also don't think it's fair to put Josh Allen like a C or something like that, because he's very talented. Anybody who actually consistently watches him can see the talent that he has. He just needs to limit the turnovers, which at the end of the day, turnovers, he'll throw 3 interceptions. That's 3 bad passes in a game, right? So if he just didn't make those 3 bad passes, or that would have changed the game. So obviously, I do think it, given some of the recent circumstances, it would be unfair to put him at the S tier level, because he's not clearly better than some of these other guys that I have him at. Joe Burrow, you could argue, is, a lot of people do think Joe Burrow should be higher. People might give me flack for that one, but anyway, I do think Josh Allen is better than Joe Burrow and has, more talent at the very least. But yeah, so Aaron Rodgers, I don't even know what to do with that. Zach Wilson, I'd probably put him at the F tier, just because I was a Garrett Wilson fantasy owner last year, and I became very jaded with Zach Wilson, because whenever Zach Wilson played, Garrett Wilson suffered in fantasy. So regardless, good luck to Zach Wilson. I hope all the best for him. And I don't know what they're gonna do, the Jets. I think that Zach Wilson's their best option. Might as well sign Flacco as a backup, since he knows the system. And quite frankly, Flacco may even perform better. He actually performed pretty well with the Jets last year when he was playing. But anyway, I digress. Josh Allen A. This is my final tier ranking. All right. Again, let me know, comment, subscribe, and let me know if you have any other ideas for tier lists. And let me know what you think. All right, I'm out, y'all. Peace.